Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back, of course, to the Time Bomb channel. And as suggested a few weeks back, we've got in today a review of the TISSOT Gentleman. Now, I confess it's not necessarily a watch that I would have chosen for myself, but having lived with it for a few days, I fully confess that it's changed my mind. It's sort of the sweet spot between that office sports watch that's classic and modern at the same time. So yeah, very, very clear design brief that I think really works. It's sort of like the TISSOT Sarb, if you will. So it reminds me quite a lot of the Traskas as well. And some, of course, might see a certain Explorer in these also, but that's entirely subjective. So let's stay with the facts and zoom in and start looking at the watch. All right, so as I say, not a watch that I would have chosen for myself, and so I started doing a little bit of digging around, and I confess as well that the Gentleman range is far more extensive than I'd appreciated. There's everything here from titanium to quartz to gold, and a price band as well, making them cover an awful lot of bases. But at present, I can only see one case size for all of these, and that's the 40 mils. And then the only difference between the different ones being when the depth of the watch, and then also the weight, of course, again, quartz, titanium, etc. Which suggests then further, if they were to introduce different case sizes, as the market will no doubt be demanding with these, it's going to become, or it could become, a little bit like the brand's own Ford Focus. The key specs then on these, while I'm talking about those things, is 40 mils across. It's 48 mils north to south, but ignore that if you're going to keep it on the steel bracelet, because as you can see, those male end links just here really do extend a very long way out, but then also a very long way down. The watch then is a very manageable 11 mils deep, and then 21 mil lugs. Why can't they make them 20 or 22? I just find brand decisions like that so absurd. Orient are guilty of the same thing. But I think in general, and specifically for me, that wrist print is ideal because it sits on wrist really comfortably, and it works very well indeed. But I can know there's going to be many people out there, screaming out saying, no, I'm not going to touch it until they release a 36 or a 38 mil variation. And yeah, I'm imagining that, this gets much more successful. That's exactly what they are going to do. Up top, even though we got quite a lot of reflection here today, we've got a AR coated sapphire, and it just peaks just a little bit above that bezel. And it's not fully domed, and I'm kind of glad that it's not fully domed, because if it had been domier, then I don't think that it would allow that dial really to dominate. And that's really what the dial needs to do on this one. I mean, that green dial, it's just delicious. It's absolutely spot on in every way. I like the fact that there's no sunburst on it. It does have a little bit of shine where you catch the light. And yes, from some angles, it does appear black, as do many of these blues and green dials. But it's very fun to play with indeed. Just getting it to that green, and yeah, in the sunlight, it adds that additional level of prettiness. As you can see, it just bounces that light back up. Yeah, very nice detail on that watch as well. The seconds hand as well, perfect length, reaching into those minute markers, very thin, very needly. But I like the movement on it as well. It's, a very comfortable movement as it tricks off around there on the dial. The hands themselves, quite sort of, again, simple with that, loom splash in the center. Again, finishing and everything on it, I think looks really quite good. There is super luminova on the hands and hour markers. And yeah, it's not going to be lighting up the night sky in any shape or form, but it's adequate. I think it's just that, adequate on a watch like this. You're probably going to need to peer at it in the dark if you've got it on the bedside table and you're not going to be using it on night ops. But clearly that's not what this watch is designed for. The crosshairs on the dial, I thought differentiated the automatics over the quartzes. Perhaps they did on previous versions of these, because looking at the TISSOT UK website today, it's quite sort of hit and miss when they include the crosshairs and when they don't. Over on the right then, we've got a signed push-pull crown as you'd expect on a watch like this. The action, as I say, it's a bit sluggish. There's quite a bit of wobble there to get it started. But when it is in motion, again, very, very smooth, not grainy in any way, shape or form. As I say, that aspect I like, but as I say, do notice right at the beginning, it's a little odd. And of course, quick set date as well. The case body itself then, the flanks, very nicely brushed, and just that bevel on the shoulder there, picking up the light reflection also. And I'll come on to the light reflection also in a little bit. I've got a separate opinion about that. But again, not necessarily huge lugs, but they do just sit, they curve down, I think, very, very, very adequately indeed. Let me just throw it on wrist even, just to show you what I mean by that comfort aspect. Because I think it sits really, really, really nicely on wrist. So flush, so flat. Zero top wobble on this bracelet. So case body design on this, absolutely excellent. It's also good to see, of course, then that we've got 100 meters worth of watery goodness with these, as opposed to the usual ineffectual 50 meters that watches like this often come with. Yeah, the bezel, it's difficult not to talk about it. The bezel is quite thick, and it certainly reminds me of bezels on other Swiss brands, and I have to say I really wish they hadn't made it so shiny. Might sound a little bit absurd, so give me a chance just to explain. I think that it really does catch all the light, and as a consequence in some lights it can really, it diminishes the effect of the dial. And the beauty of this watch, I think, is that beautiful, beautiful green underneath, again, matching with the silver of those hour markers and the hands. I think that works absolutely fantastically, but what you find is so much of the light gets reflected off that bezel that it stops it from, bouncing off the dial, which is where we really want it. The date window at the 3 is a little bit of an odd position because it's, they've left quite a lot of hour marker there, and it almost seems as if, it almost seems as if it wants to make friends with the center of the hands here. Whereas if they just popped it at the 6, I think, boom, it would have been an absolute winner, because it would have then given you that whole top section of the watch nice and free. Again, odd choice by including the silicium here on the dial. That's referring to the silicon hairspring, which adds further anti-magnetic properties and lifespan to the spring. However, there are many detractors to that who feel that it's nothing other than a marketing ploy. So again, I'll leave you guys to make up your own minds about that one, and drop us a comment down below if you've got an opinion. This one then, of course, is, excuse me, get the focus. Right, this one, of course, then rocking the Powermatic 80, which we discussed very briefly when I reviewed the Pro 2000. It's a 25 jeweler. However, as you can see, there's not that many jewels on display here. The rotor is quite pretty, and there, of course, is your SI for the silicium. That movement, the CO80 variations used by Hamilton, Rado, and Satina, and I'm curious to know, the differences between those. I think it's probably all down to the innards a little bit, but I'd like to know a little bit more about it. But as I mentioned before, when I did the Pro 2000, these movements do seem to be quite divisive on the old watch forums, with it, being quite sort of each end of the spectrum. People either love them or they just say, meh, it's a bit trashy. As I say, the sapphire, you've also then, you've got sapphire in that case back. But if you look closer at the case back, you can of course then see that there's no real sections or areas to lift that case back off. So clearly it's going to be back to Tissot for any and all servicing. And I did read somewhere that somebody said that these movements don't get serviced, they simply get replaced. Again, I can't vouch for that, so don't take my word for it. And again, if you know better, please do drop us a comment down below. But again, I think as I mentioned previously, I really don't know why they bothered, with the see-through case back here. I mean, that movement is pretty dull to look at. And that might push many in the direction of the quartz model. Its cousin, the PRX, also comes as a quartz auto variation or variant. And I looked at both of them in store, the two blue ones next to each other, and I really have to say that the automatic version just looked so much better finished and better built. The bracelet on this one is also something to reference because it's actually quite heavy and quite thick. It's 21 mils at the top and it does taper down to 18 down here. But again, because of that 21 mils, it is going to be an issue. If this was mine, I think it would be crying out for a vintage leather. I just think, yeah, that dial design, yeah, on a beautiful top quality leather would just make this watch sing even further. The butterflies on the bottom as well. I'll reference those in just 2 seconds. I mean, there's a little jangle in that one. But yeah, on wrist, it's quite comfortable. The current owner of this one wanted one of the blue dialers, but he secured a very good discount with his AD on the green, and he's really happy with it. As I say, this is the watch that inspired him then to go on and buy the Pro 2000. He's really satisfied with the watch, you know, as a daily wearer. The size, the newer dial design, the fit and comfort are all working for him absolutely. Like me, he's not a huge fan of the butterfly clasps or those polished center links. It's just something that, you know, the eyeball doesn't work for either of us. But at the same time, he's saying he's enjoying trying them out. And the other aspect that he references is the bracelet fits him perfectly. He's able to size it to get in perfectly, which is an issue that many of us find with steels that don't come with micro adjusts, etc., etc. To me, the watch feels absolutely brilliant in hand. There's a lovely weight to it that balances it. And as I say, that spread across the lugs, I think reduces any wobble. It helps it sit nice and flush on your wrist, and it looks brilliant. Wrap up, I think if you need your watch to be Swiss and you want a mid-range quality piece, I think this one is going to be going a very long way to reaching that objective. If only that bezel were just a little less shiny. Again, that's my opinion as always. Massive thanks again to our subscriber for the generosity in lending this one into the channel for review. And yeah, look forward to reading your thoughts and comments down below, guys, as always. Appreciate your time and your view. And until the next vid, this is your host, the Bombardier, signing off. Cheers, guys.